Hello, everyone. Welcome back to StarSound Speaks, episode 218. This is Irlianna Samsara of StarSound Astrology, and I'm so thrilled because we have back our beloved Ari Moshe Wolfe is joining us again. Hello, Ari.
Hi.
I'm so excited that you're here. If you're new to the channel, you might not know that I interviewed Ari back in, I believe it was in May, and it was about the upcoming conjunction when Mars, the North Node, and Uranus all lined up, and it was a historic conjunction, and it's an incredible. You still certainly, if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and listen because it has implications, of course, that roll out and unfold over these next few years. So yes, for sure. And today we are going to be talking about, well, first of all, Ari is he's an evolutionary astrologer, and his work is based upon the teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green, but as Ari likes to say, as you like to say, what, blended with your own ongoing self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this particular talk, we're going to be talking about the Pluto ingress into Aquarius, which will start on March 12th, I believe it is, next year. Big month of March. And then how, because Pluto is a key signature in evolutionary astrology. It's a focal point. And so as it, the evolution of the soul. And so Pluto in Aquarius, and then how it will be squaring the nodes next year. And of course, that's also a huge story in its own right. So we're going to talk about that, and that'll be like the focus of today. But, I have to say, everybody, I've been meaning to have you back, Ari, for a while. And I reached out to you, and I remember you said, hey, I've got this new course. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I went to the website, and I could barely read the words. I just got flooded with emotion. I mean, the vibe that came, I have a real sensitive way with me. I've spent many years doing energy medicine, sound healing, and energy medicine. So I'm just, pretty sensitive. But when I read the words on your site, I don't know, it was this flood of, it was such love and care and devotion. I couldn't even read the words. It was like, I just said, I just emailed you. I'm like, you got to come back. You got to talk about this. But I know you're offering, there's a free webinar coming up, and I want people to know that they can go to your site, which is arimoshewolfe.com.
arimoshe.com.
Ari Moshe. Okay,
Yeah.
great. And I'll have the link below for you guys. Yeah, the free webinar. And you're also doing, I want to say this up front because it's just so vital with next year with Pluto's ingress in Aquarius. My goodness. You have you're doing your 1-year training program, right? Heart and Soul Centered Astrology.
Yes.
1-year training program. And if you could just tell us a little bit about what that looks like, because I think it's important that we know about this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. So the training program, it's rooted in the evolutionary astrology teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green. It's really for anyone that wants to learn astrology from a soul perspective, and it's from the ground up. So whether you are already practicing astrology or totally new to it, it works for both because it's really just starting from the very basics. And the way that I teach and the whole orientation is just looking at astrology and the natal chart at the core as a map that helps us understand our unique path of awakening. So that's how I think of this lifetime. That's how I think of every single soul, that the circumstances of our life, the total reality of the human experience that we have, is perfectly relevant to our own evolutionary needs. Everything is reflecting back to us where there is, in this present moment, the next step in our own evolutionary growth. And it's one of those things where I call it a heart and soul centered astrology training, because it's not just soul work. It is soul work, right? We're looking at the soul's reality, which is a profound and beautiful thing to do, to go underneath the surface of the appearances of the human dramas and stories and personalities and things that we seem to be so identified with. But it's heart and soul, because for me, and how I teach this, to be looking at the soul reality and really having this view that our life, each of our personal life experiences, there's a quality of sacred and meaningfulness and holiness and perfection to it. And I think there's a lens of compassion and care and validation that comes with that perspective, that says you are here, you are meant to be here, this is meaningful, there is healing here. And that's how I teach it. That's how I really look at astrology, that I want individuals to recognize that the totality of our life experience, at the core, it's often difficult, and we'll talk about next year and Pluto. Evolution isn't necessarily an easy experience. We can all acknowledge that.
Yeah, especially in the last few years, right?
Right. And just really just being here. But to have the experience of meeting with another person who might be looking at you as a soul, whether they're looking at a chart or they're just working with whatever modality or skill, for them to validate and really see everything in your life from a soul perspective, there's an immense amount of healing and beauty in that. So this is all about healing. And, those who are drawn to become astrologers or just want to learn this for their own ongoing soul growth, it's valuable on that level as well.
Lovely.
So this is a whole year training program. You can do just the first half of the year, which is the basic evolutionary meaning of the planets, signs, houses, very basic. And then the second half of the year is bringing it all together with aspects, nodes, interpretive technique. So a lot of people do the full year training program, but a good handful of people just elect to do the first half of the year. So as you said, you can learn more about that on my website. And I just want to say, you've agreed to be an affiliate. So if you want to enroll, we have an affiliate code. What was it? What was the code that we created? StarSound 50.
Right, StarSound 50.
So you get a discount, and you also support this channel as well.
So people signing up can get a discount on tuition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And feel free to reach out if you have any more questions or want to talk about it. The program begins in January 15th that week.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, January 15th. We're heading into quite an exciting year. Wow, I'm so glad you are piloting that. I have to say that, man, yeah, everything, there's a beauty. I love how you always weave beauty in, and it's just so amazing. And it's hard when we look around us in the politics and the world at large today to see, seeing through these things. Like just before I got on the podcast, I was reading about this young man. He's 24 years old. His name is Nick Fuentes, and I'm not familiar with him, but he had dinner with Donald Trump, and the New York Times wrote an article saying what kind of a, Holocaust denier, women should be slapped, shouldn't have the right to vote. I mean, blacks, women, the Jewish community, just horrendous. Like, he said he compares himself to Hitler. I mean, this is not only is somebody saying this is a young person, and it was very disturbing to read. And yet, when I hear you give me hope, Ari, because I see these things and I read about these things, but I also know that that is also part of this awakening. Is this stuff has to come up. This is I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit about that, because it was so disturbing. But I know that we can't say, well, this shouldn't be, and we have to get rid of this. It's like Eckhart Tolle talks about how, it's the collective insanity is presencing itself, but that's part of the evolution too. So if you could just, speak to that a little bit before we get into the Pluto.
Sure. And maybe this can be our segue into the Pluto material.
Pluto is no joyride.
Not necessarily. Yeah, usually the essence of Pluto speaks of an evolutionary process, and evolutionarily corresponds to, on the deepest level, what we are seeking. What is it we're identified with for our own basic security and wholeness? So we're all forming object attachment. Okay, we say, oh, this is what and we look around all the human beings in this world, and we each have our own identity construct, our own sense of who we are and what we need and what's important. And we're all going to need to defend that on some level. And the evolutionary journey, the way that Jeff Green describes evolution, is a gradual elimination, exhaustion of all desires, until the only remaining desire is a desire to reunite with the source. And it's a process. You can't just like skip over desires. So for every single person, there's some sense of, okay, you know, we come into this world and we have this desire for fame and power. So we're going to build an identity construct that will allow us to resonate with that experience. That's going to feed something in us, right? But then that's also going to go at some point. Like everything that feeds us, that provides some sense of satisfaction, it'll come for a while, we'll grow, we'll learn. It could be a relationship. I really want to be with this person, or I really want to have this kind of experience, right? There's something in playing it out. It feeds us. We get something from that. We osmose it into our consciousness. That's really what's happening. And then ideally we let go. And we don't even necessarily have to have an experience with something outside. Every single desire needs to be met. That's the point with Pluto. Like every single dynamic within our own consciousness has to be revealed and met. It doesn't mean we need to play it out, because we could have all kinds of desires for fame, power, admiration, wealth, sex, whatever. And if we're playing out every single desire for giving all of these things some kind of action, it could be an endless process of just generating more action, more consequence, more entanglement, more messiness. So one way or another, though, we have to be completely honest and completely meet whatever's inside of us. And until we meet it, it's just kind of there in us, right? It's like a shadow that is just, we're carrying it around, and it's going to leak out, right? It's going to dominate our own consciousness. Like the elements within us that aren't integrated, that aren't met, honestly, is unconscious. It's going to be dominating our waking state without us realizing it. So like the basic Pluto work, and we'll jump into Aquarius in a moment, but I'm just called to share this perspective.
Sure.
The basic Pluto work is meeting our shadow, meeting our desires. And there are two basic modalities for how to be in relationship to that. Either we're honest with ourselves and we can make conscious choices, right? Whether that's playing something out, or it's saying, okay, well, here's something in myself that needs to be dealt with. Right? I need to integrate this. It's not a negative thing, right? I'm going to consciously learn how to manifest this experience. Or there's an addiction and it's feeding something, but I don't really know what's underneath that addiction. So I'm going to consciously attract or resonate with a spiritual modality or a practice or a teacher, or I'm going to research something to help me become more psychologically aware of what's really going on, right? One way or another, we have to meet the content inside. Mantra, mandalas, particular relationships, learning how to focus our attention towards whatever we need to do to evolve. I'm going to focus on earning more money, right? Or I'm obsessed with money. I'm going to focus on getting to the core of my addiction. Why am I addicted? Like we can go in all kinds of directions. None of them are right or wrong, but one way or another, there is a way of becoming consciously empowered to take responsibility for our own growth and choosing where we're directing our attention. In a sense, that's one of the only things we have true agency over, which is funny because we don't have agency over it if we don't know that we don't. It's sort of this
Right.
mysterious piece of truth,
Right.
but we have to really want to know it. That's what I find. The other modality is to become totally identified with that craving state. It's always going to be craving or aversion. Those are always going to be two equal sides. And we form an identity structure around it. And that's going to lead to an increasing state of victimization, right? Let's say I want to be famous and powerful or important. And if I'm addicted to that and I'm not making conscious choices to integrate that and then move on, it's going to become a point of fixation. It becomes a point of addiction. And then anything in life that's keeping me from that object focus is going to be a threat to what I've determined as necessary for my own growth. So I'm not acknowledging my own evolutionary growth as within myself, within my capacity to make changes, because everything comes and goes. Everything's impermanent. So anytime any person, place, experience, whatever, becomes an absolute need, we're no longer empowered. And we have to maintain some level of control and manipulation in order to maintain whatever it is we're seeking outside of ourselves. When we understand that we can't control reality, we'll learn how to make empowered, conscious choices in our life to meet the part of ourself that's not resolved, but we won't need to be in control, right? When things don't work out, we'll come back to a new choice, right? So there are times in our life for all of us, and then there are souls that are sort of more chronically invested in this way, where we get stuck in a sort of victimization consciousness, which says the outer world is what's preventing me or keeping me from what I otherwise recognize as necessary for my fulfillment. And so, I had this beautiful conversation, and I call it beautiful, even though the content was a little bit dark. Beautiful man, a very caring individual. Is one of those people that will he'll take care of anyone in the community, right? As it ends up, he has these incredibly, very, very strong, the racist views. It is, and a lot of fear and anger, or just a particular perspective on life that's very surprising. It doesn't seem to match his open-heartedness, and I won't go into all the views, but it's obviously not how I look at reality, not how I think of other people. And you just probe, and at a certain point I was hurt. And I've determined the cause of my suffering as being predominantly outside of myself. These people did this to me. So there's a sort of jadedness and distrust. And there are many ways in which we can work. I mean, we can work with that jadedness and distrust and just say, I'm not going to open up to love and intimacy. You hurt me, or these people are bad. These people are evil. These people are untrustworthy. Or, for example, look at Nazi Germany. What Hitler did to the masses of people, where they were able to create an avenue, an escape avenue to direct the cause of their own suffering, their own disparity on a particular group of people or various groups of people. And that was a way of deflecting total responsibility for their own reality onto other people. Now you connect that with a particular psychology of unresolved desire. I have the need to be important. I have the need to be powerful. And I've had experiences where I feel victimized and I feel small. Well, if I can direct blame and cause for my smallness onto someone else and make them the problem, that then creates a very, very easy avenue for me to return to a state of empowerment. And I mean, there are 10,000 ways in which humans can do that. In the example you gave, a soul that's identified with these forces of absolute manipulation and darkness and false forms of power and control. It's one way in which, and I don't know this individual you're talking about, but it's one way in which this soul and many have worked with their need for power and control. Right. And it's just really a choice. And one of the core dynamics of Pluto is cooperation or resistance. Cooperation says I'm fully responsible for my reality and I'm responsible for my own evolution. Resistance says, in a sense, I'm not responsible for it.
Yeah, like
I'm going to hold on to what makes me secure. Yeah, it requires. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It requires a persistent state of victimization.
Right. That's what he was saying. He said the white people are getting genocided.
Always.
And so we have to stop this,
Thing is, now here's how we can work with that in a healthy way. We're not different than that. We can identify with that element of victimization. Have any of us ever had a relationship where we're pointing to another person and saying, if they would just act differently, right? Or I did this and they treated me this way. It's no different. Meaning, obviously, we're working with a sociopathic psychology, and that's very different than any typical person that deals with these struggles. But the elements are very similar. And if we can recognize within ourselves the very places where we lose our power. And I think this is one of the deepest tricks in Pluto work. doing this evolutionary work, is
Mhm.
to be determined from within ourselves to not allow our minds fall into a state of victimization. And
Mm.
this means to take that level of responsibility for ourselves, means really minding our thoughts, really means minding my own perception corresponds to Pluto, because perception is born from desire. This whole human life is a function of desire. We come into this life in the circumstances of our life experience because we're desiring to have a certain kind of experience. We're wanting to play something out. We're wanting to find more of ourselves, and that's what Pluto's all about. And so we're not seeing the world in the same way because we all have different reasons for being in this world. We have a different soul program, different desire dynamics, right? So perception's born from desire, and thus our perception points back to, well, what is it I'm wanting that's determining the way that I'm perceiving this experience in the first place? There's no objective perception. What we perceive is more of a mirror than it is a fact. And I believe that to be very real, very true. And in my own experience, as I continue to meet my own content, do my own work, I only find that to be a very deep, ever unfolding truth. Right?
Mm.
This has to be something we find for ourselves, right? We can't just intellectually apply that idea. But as I get curious about my perceptions serve that which I'm wanting to see, as opposed to my perceptions are some sort of objective reality, it brings me to a greater curiosity of how does it make me feel? Right? Is my story
That's
of
the
what I'm
kicker.
seeing truly serving my
Yeah.
own evolution, or is it in some subtle way keeping me disempowered because I'm believing that something on the outside is the determinant for my own power?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's very tricky. It's very tempting when we're going through hard times. So all kinds of addictive patterns. So you hear the words that I would use: obsession, compulsion, addiction, getting stuck in a loop of negative perception,
Mm. All classic
not being
Pluto.
able to let go of the past, an
Mm.
obsessive focus on getting something to work out or trying to get a particular result.
Mhm.
This can lead to any kind of obsessive thought or behavior dynamic that loops over and over and over and over again. We all know the thousands of ways this can happen. When we're working through evolutionary experiences in our life, and Jeff Green spoke about Pluto transits and important Pluto times as being an evolutionary transition. 2023 is an evolutionary transition. We'll go there soon. When we're in these periods, where we are to look, where we are to strengthen ourselves and practice really is at those very tendencies to get stuck in these addictive, compulsive ways of thinking and behaving.
Mm.
And what it's pointing to is the very edge of our own evolutionary growth. It's like beyond that threshold is where we have not yet been. There's a level of self-realization and self-knowledge beyond the threshold of these loops and these patterns. To get to that threshold means fundamentally there has to be a desire to evolve. And that desire to evolve is the bottom line. That desire to evolve becomes a point of concentration that it's generated from within our soul, within our own essential being. And that
Mm.
desire to evolve says, okay, I'm acknowledging that in this present moment, I have a choice between two options. We know that if any one of us have ever made a decision or ever made a commitment, for example, last week I made a commitment to do a very simple cleanse. The cleanse was eat my first meal when I'm hungry, only eat another meal, no snacking in between, no food after my last meal, and no sugar. Very simple, actually. Like I'm eating food, just no sugar and no snacking, and only eat when you're hungry. But that alone brought me I had so much more energy. It felt so, but to not snack, in particular at night, right? That's like the hard one for most of us. Really meant getting sort of present and quiet for what I'm feeling.
Yeah. You
And
really
without
have to meet
that
that.
choice, it's just so easy to
Yeah.
move with those compulsive behaviors and not really realize what are we running away from? What are the patterns and the dynamics within ourselves that we're not willing to face? I think it's very easy to create a normalized reality where we're not really facing ourselves. We have to want to. And I think sometimes the temperature rises in our life and we realize, whew, if I don't really make the choice to look inside and evolve, I won't. And when things get hard, sometimes that the gift of challenging transits it sometimes becomes a motive to really get serious with this human life, to
Yeah.
really get serious about the opportunity that we have to evolve and grow. And it might feel really messy and hard and difficult, and right, but actually it might motivate us in a way that we maybe otherwise wouldn't feel like we need to. That's how it is. Health crisis inspires greater thoughtfulness around, what am I really doing with my food, right? Relationship crisis really brings greater awareness of, what am I doing? Why am I making these choices? So that's the gift in these evolutionary transitions.
Yeah. And
But it still requires that choice to say, I'm going to do the work.
right. It requires that choice that you're going to do the work, because you see that, like, usually it's precipitated by suffering.
Yeah.
And it's pain, and it's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And when we're in touch with what's available, that has to be, more alluring, I guess, for lack of a better word in this moment, than what we have. That when you talked earlier about the loop, that constant, that Pluto thing of this constant loop that doesn't, go anywhere, in this obsessive compulsive loop. And it's like, but we also get, at some point, we get present to that suffering of what that provides. And it's like, no, but people don't change until really when they can finally see that there's another way, that something else that's available, and they're willing to give and take responsibility and give up that painful loop, because it's costing them something when they get in touch with what it's really costing them.
Yeah. And there's something incredibly humbling around recognizing, well, eventually this body is going to fall away. And we just really get more in touch with the impermanence of this life and the impermanence of everything. The more we touch base with that, the more we realize this is an opportunity to do the best that we can. And everything that we're attached to is going to fall away at some point too, like the money, the relationship, the body, the looks, like everything that we are identified with will fail us at some point. But we can actually find a sort of balanced gratitude and appreciation for what we have when we recognize everything is a blessing, and to be in right relate, to use it in a good way, to use it to support ourselves and one another, to grow, to heal, to return to love, to make something beautiful and healing and useful. There's a teaching in the Course in Miracles that I love, which is, I am here to be truly helpful. When our focus is on that, it's like we can feel more rested in our life, and also not be as concerned with the impermanence, with the coming and the going of all things.
I love that.
What happens with Aquarius corresponds to, and some of the things that we spoke about, I think for the first half of the Uranus North Node video might address this, because Uranus rules Aquarius. Aquarius corresponds to two dimensions, the individuality of the soul and the individuality of creation itself. Prior to our story and our thinking of it, you can say that there's an intelligence to life. That intelligence is impersonal. It exists prior to our comprehension of it. We can say that this intelligence exists as an archetype, or a series of archetypes. We are going to map these archetypes according to our limited perception and understanding of the wholeness of reality. And as our intelligence grows, we may be able to apprehend a greater scope of the archetypal nature of intelligence. But there is an intelligence to creation. An example of that, just to give one of many, we have things like geometry or sacred geometry, where we can look at certain geometry and patterns and number sequences that exist universally throughout not just the human body, not just the earth, but the universe.
Right.
We'll see it in astronomical patterns. We'll see it in the planets themselves. We'll see it in stars, we'll see it in flowers, we'll see it in shells, we'll see it in the proportions of the human body, right?
Right.
There's a certain mathematics that's universal, that's impersonal. We can also see this in a more psycho-spiritual way. We could have a dream and see number sequences or animal totems or symbols, and they have a universal meaning, right? If you dream about your father, it might not be your father. It's an archetype. It has a universal symbology.
Sure.
Just like you can pull a tarot card and there are a bunch of symbols on that card, which represents archetypal dynamics that exist. Now, these archetypal dynamics, we can think of them as sort of fractal. The entirety of the universe expresses these universal laws or these universal intelligences.
Yes.
And it exists inside as well as outside. And so one thing that Aquarius represents is that the entire universe is also within. We can look within and find the same patterns and dynamics, and we can look without and we can find them. That's why astrology is not causative of anything. Like people say, what's the influence of Mercury retrograde? There's no influence, zero. There's no causality here. It's reflective of the one reality. So astrology is one way of looking out at the stars and, in a sense, mapping the universal objective archetypal unfolding of reality. What's happening within? It's simultaneous. It's not outside or as within, so without, as above, so below.
Right.
So that's what's represented on a basic level of understanding Aquarius. When we look at human consciousness, we're going to find groups of people, souls manifesting as humans, resonating with each other, and they're all going to share a certain level of intelligence. When I speak about a level of intelligence, there's a shared understanding that all souls are at different levels of self-realization, right? So we're going to find groups of souls that are going to share a certain outlook or an understanding of reality that will resonate. And that outlook of reality might be a more ethnocentric, me and my people. I'm seeing the world through the lens of a particular cultural or ethnic perspective. And my mythology, my perspective of life is going to fit into that. And I won't be able to apprehend a more universal worldview that encompasses other cultures and perspectives or religions or spiritual perspectives. I'm just not there. It's not going to happen. And it wouldn't be relevant for me. I'm not going to apprehend that level of reality. So souls at that level of consciousness are naturally going to resonate with other people at that level of consciousness. And most likely, they will resonate with people of a similar culture or a similar religion. Right? That's just one example from an Aquarian point of view. We're going to form groups of people that are going to share a particular level of intelligence and apprehension of reality. We'll have groups of people that share more of a spiritual and universal understanding of reality that will then resonate with souls and be able to share a sort of community and understanding with other souls that share that as well. And these souls are more global or cosmic centric, and they will also be able to understand and resonate with souls that are at different levels of intelligence, because that level of consciousness is inclusive. It's not excluding others, right? So that's just another example of, so I could have a conversation with you about astrology and these kinds of things because we can resonate. And so in a natural way, and this isn't like an exclusive treehouse club, you're special, I'm special, you're not. It's just in a natural way, we can resonate with one another and be a part of community in the sense that we can both understand and speak to and relate to and even use the language of astrology. It's a combination of level of intelligence in terms of apprehension reality and also natural interest and affinity.
Right.
There are people that are going to share a more spiritual level of understanding, but they're not going to be speaking an astrology lens. They're going to be resonating with other communities and groups of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have all different kinds of cultures and subcultures, political groups, spiritual groups, astrology, non-dual groups, whatever. It's like everyone on every level of thinking, we all form circles and groups with other people. None of us are in our entirety defined or identified by any of these groups, yet we will all resonate and create naturally these communities. And the people that follow your channel, there's a natural affinity and community that's created on its own. It just is. those that share particular political outlooks or views are going to resonate with each other, and it's a natural affinity. They're going to find a sense of belonging on some level by joining that political group that resonates with them. Yet simultaneously, we're all our own essential soul individual, and our nature cannot ever be defined by any particular group or community.
That's the polarity point being Leo.
I guess you can say that in the sense that we also have to be focused on our own self-realization. I am unique, and my own nature cannot conform in its entirety to anything outside of myself, right? A lot of people will do that. I am entirely identified with my social, political, or religious group. But there comes a point where something about you or something about someone else won't fit into that, okay? And that's just innate, because the intelligence of life is far more holistic than anything we can put into a box. So the Aquarian impulse is always pushing us to liberate from the known and arrive at our essential nature. And as we do that, we're always going to find ourselves resonating with people and groups at the level of intelligence or at the stage of liberation that we're working with. And we go through that. Like, we might have the experience of like, okay, you know, I'm really identified. I saw on Facebook, a friend of mine was she identifies herself as being a previously new age spiritual coach. And perhaps in her world or in her mind, that's a particular outlook, right? Being a spiritual coach might mean you're resonating with a particular community of people that share a sort of like self-empowerment, trust yourself, go get them kind of attitude. That coaching model that's going to encourage people to, you know, build their business, build their practice. You know, it's a particular, and you'll go on retreats. And then there comes a point where maybe at some point this individual, and I don't know her story, she got turned on to Jesus, but in a sort of like more, it doesn't feel like religion Jesus, but like definitely Jesus. Like, I'm no longer interested in affirming the importance of our own personal will. I'm interested in prayer now, and which is cool. I'm not judging any of this. I'm just pointing out that process for her led from, okay, I no longer feel as identified with this group. I've met new people that are into prayer and actually focusing on, this is not about going and getting it according to my own individual importance. This is more about trusting divine, like some sort of divine guidance, right? And we all have these experiences. And as we do that, the people that we resonated with and the lifestyles, it just seems less relevant. And there's something else that opens up. We're not always letting go. It might just be opening up and expanding and redefining in some way. Or there might be like, oh, it just, we don't resonate as much. Law of attraction, it just doesn't come to us anymore.
You'll see this in 2023. You feel that, how do you think this is going to play out?
So what this means for 2023, because as Pluto's moving in and out of Aquarius, and let's be clear, it's doing this for basically till the end of 2024. So it's going to go back into Capricorn twice.
Standing at that threshold.
It is. There's an evolutionary push for us to look at where we are suppressing our own individuality because we want to fit in. We're afraid of the consequences of that. So what's a lot of the trauma that happens as we evolve? Well, I'm different. I feel differently. I have a new thought or a new idea or a new desire. I'm going to be excluded. My old friends won't like me anymore. Or you're different. I'm going to persecute you because I'm actually threatened by that. I need to maintain the status quo. We're called to break our status quo. And that can be very terrifying. And there are two things that I want to highlight. For Pluto moving into Aquarius during this time, and there are many nuances to this transit. This can be a second talk of looking at more of the specific transits, because there's a lot to speak to, but just in a very broad way.
We'll come back and we'll do that. We'll do a part two of that. I'm happy
to.
Yeah, we'll break it down.
Pluto moving into Aquarius speaks to two general dynamics. One, there is the because Pluto is about desire and evolution, and Aquarius is about liberation from the known and an ongoing process of freeing ourselves from all conditioning. right? So we're raising our vibration to a higher level of consciousness that resonates more with the intelligence of life itself, our own essential nature. We're going to be meeting all of the very places where we're stuck or addicted, entangled, and in a sense, where we don't know our own power to free ourselves up and liberate and know our own freedom. The
Wow.
very places where we feel entrapped or stuck, and thus where there's paranoia, fear, a sense of, I don't want to make changes, I'm afraid of the unknown. There's the dynamic of suppression that results. That suppression is, I'm going to suppress this impulse for liberation because this is scary. I don't want to shake things up.
Right.
The shaking things up here is literally everything that I've identified as essentially secure. There's a threat that that's going to fall away, right? I'm faced with the possibility of losing that security, and the rejection, the excommunication, the losing all the structures that are familiar to me. Okay, so that suppression then results in a lot of dis-ease, right? And that suppression can result in almost like, if you're gonna hold one end of it being whatever life, it's gonna burst on the other end, right? If you're not opening it up here, it's gonna put the pressure is gonna go somewhere else. Yeah,
has to go
so
somewhere.
that can lead to a lot of sudden shocks and surprises in some way. That's why Aquarius corresponds to that. Essentially, this energy needs to go out. It's like,
yeah, it'll find a way.
It has to find a way. And that can be incredibly traumatic and stressful.
Yes, it cannot
or
be.
we can find it happening within ourselves, sudden blowouts, right?
Right.
In the world, we can find a lot of that happening, a lot of these core dynamics where that which is suppressed. Now we'll find groups of people, Aquarius, that resonate with a sort of more liberated consciousness, saying enough with the status quo. We have been seeing this for a while, but it's really growing right now all over the world, where more repressive regimes, patriarchal constructs, are really trying to keep individuality and liberation at bay. More and more, that's going to open up. Politically, however, any situation, socially, politically, where a soul is being told to be accepted, you need to conform to this way of being, right? I see a lot of people who were Democratic now becoming, who are Democrats now going Republican. A lot of people that were Republican becoming and I see a lot of people are like, well, I don't identify, I identify with the more social justice, environmental elements, but I don't identify with some of the governmental control elements. And it's like the lines are being blurred.
Yes.
Right? Like a lot of the Bernie Sanders supporters and the Trump supporters, the lines have always been very blurred, even though we can look at it from a certain angle and say these are very different perspectives or very different levels of consciousness. Right? I can say in my perspective, Bernie Sanders' consciousness reflects more of a universal we caring for all, whereas Trump on his level of consciousness is more of an egocentric me and mine, I care about me level of thinking. But because of what's suppressed, we can't judge this.
Right.
We can't judge where we are each called to say, I want to try this. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to identify with this because perhaps there are elements in these different ways of exploring that are allowing us to access that which has been suppressed within our own individuality. Yes. What's important to recognize is it's fluid and there's an ongoing process of liberation. Really, Pluto in Aquarius says, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am my soul. And you can't define the soul. You can't possess the soul. Everything comes and goes. Wow. And my community, my belonging, the groups, everything is basically not descriptive of who I am. It's just another experience I'm having to awaken to more of what I am. But we have to really hold it loosely and not become too possessive.
Because then that becomes another, yeah.
So where we have people defending and right, that's to be sort of relaxed in the process. Now, the other dynamic that I want to speak to that's very important is a shit ton of psychological content and dynamics might be emerging through our consciousness that pertains to suppressed content from the past. Because Aquarius corresponds to, it's a very interesting archetype. It corresponds to not just the individuality of the soul, it corresponds to the totality of the soul experience from this lifetime and past lives that is suppressed, but as informed and shaped our own ongoing evolutionary experience.
Mhm.
So for example, we don't have a conscious memory of that lifetime where we were in the monastery and everyone was killed because we were being persecuted for our religious beliefs. Just to give an example, right? Yet that has an imprint upon our consciousness. Everything's relevant. This is not a meaning that happened because it's all a part of the soul journey. It's a part of the evolutionary process, right? But these things happen and it imprints our consciousness. Now we're in this lifetime and we're afraid to speak out about our spiritual views. We're terrified when we see people thinking things that are different than ourselves. We're terrified to be different. It's not rational. We don't know why. Right? And it could be in this lifetime, little things happen that sort of reflect and bring up these larger ancient traumas.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We once said
Yeah.
something and someone says, oh no, that's stupid, you're wrong. And it brings up the terror of like, oh my God, I'm going to be outcast. I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be persecuted. No one's going to like me. I'm always going to be an outsider. Maybe in that last lifetime, we saw everyone being killed. We're alone and we had a survival crisis.
Right.
Now we're going to feel like I need to like withdraw and retreat and not really reveal myself. I mean, we could have had lifetimes where we were consumed with addictions, right? And we have the soul memory. It's in our individuated unconscious, the Jungian term. This is something that Jeff Green beautifully borrowed from Jung. Aquarius, Uranus correspond to the individuated unconscious. We're not consciously thinking of it,
Right.
but it's in our soul field. Right? We could have had addictions where we got lost in particular objects of desire, object focuses, right? What happens is, let's say you were, addicted to money, addicted to power and wealth, right? And like did things that were unethical just to have more money, just right. Pluto moves into Aquarius and all of this content wants to purge, wants to be released, wants to be liberated, right? Our addictive compulsive dynamics relative to Aquarius are going to bring us to a head where it's going to bring us to sort of like a wall where we can't evolve, we can't grow without really facing all of this. So we might have dreams or symbols or dynamics manifesting in our life experience that bring up a lot of fear.
Yeah.
We might be afraid of losing everything, right? We might have a dream where a house burns down, or have experiences where, suddenly someone's calling us and threatening to take all of our money. If we can see all of these things as archetypal symbols, it comes back into what is the element within my own consciousness that I'm purging and purifying. I think this is a very important point that I would want to really encourage everyone to take in. We can think of the elements that are arising in our consciousness, recognize them as impersonal symbols. Not everything needs to be acted upon. Not everything needs to become a story. I once had a dream where actually I was, I put all of my possessions out on the street and I forgot about it. And then I came back and they were gone. And then in that dream, one of my teachers said, where do you believe in the possibility of loss? Or where do you believe in the idea of loss? And I found that so helpful because that brought me straight to the heart of it. It's not that I'm going to lose something. It's not that I have to worry about, am I going to lose? It's more about how is that reflecting within me, within my own consciousness, that there is an investment in the idea of loss. In fact, that there's an investment in the idea of gain and loss. Where we're invested in gain and loss is where we're going to be very vulnerable. Yeah, it's very deep. It takes us right to the heart of our soul.
Really deep.
It takes us right to the heart of truth.
Yeah.
And most of us are invested perpetually in, well, I don't want to lose this person. I don't want to lose this money, or I need more. I need to figure it out. And we become fearful and anxious. And we don't look at our core belief. Like, where are we essentially holding on to a story? And all of our stories, again, reflect our desires. We perceive the world according to what it is we're wanting, what we're playing out. So if we're attached to power through wealth, we're going to have a lot of stories that resonate with gain and loss around, I don't have what I need, or I need more, or I'm afraid of losing what I have. Our whole world and all of our stories are going to constellate around control. And then these dream symbols will come up in our life in one form or another, in our waking life, in our dream life. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aquarius, it's the same thing. They're all symbols, they're all archetypes. And if we can objectify it and look at what's liberating within us, that's the key. There can be a lot of evolutionary challenges happening in the world. And I think one of the deepest teachings and prayers and blessings that I would want to offer for myself and for all of us during this evolutionary transition is to focus on our own evolution. Who we are, what is really being healed and purged from our own consciousness, and arriving at our essential wholeness through all of these processes. That's a way of not getting like most souls on this planet are going to feel themselves drawn one way or another, especially with all the political social dynamics emerging and our own personal lives. It can feel very easy to feel fear and to feel victimization. So I think there's a great opportunity to accelerate our own evolutionary work by really understanding everything's reflecting what is wanting to be freed up and liberated on the inside.
And not to be afraid to go there, but meet it, go lean into that. And that's going to bring us through that portal. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I was going to say, I think, I know this has been a longer session than I wanted, but I love when you go on a roll. It's so amazing. I just can't interrupt. I just love it. It's so deep and it's so important. And I'm thinking, you know, maybe what we want to do is, because I wanted to ask you about Jeffrey, some of the things that Jeffrey wrote relative to what you're saying, but let's do a part 2. Let's meet again. Yeah. And the nodes, we didn't get a chance to do that on this podcast, but to talk about where Pluto's ingress next year is going to be squaring the nodes. And so that's and what that entails, what you see about that, or how you feel about that. So I would like, because I think this deserves a deeper exploration, especially with nodes. So would you be up for that, doing another?
Absolutely, yeah. And since it's going to happen later in the year, we can revisit it.
Yeah,
A book that I would recommend though, by Jeffrey Wolfe Green is Uranus: Freedom from the Known. It'll just be really helpful.
Freedom from the what?
From the known? From the known, yeah.
Oh, okay. And the book I have
connecting.
The book I have is this one, Evolutionary Journey of the Soul.
And you can read the Pluto and Aquarius section, which can be a very helpful area to read.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We're also doing a Pluto and Aquarius class. I'm a part of the Jeffrey Wolfe Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers. It's a year-long series of Pluto classes. Maybe I'll give you a link to that in the description, because it's a class that we're going to be teaching with an additional like discussion mentorship group on Pluto and Aquarius in a little bit. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of teachings and content around. This is one of the core transits of this decade for sure.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Pluto.
20 years.
Close with one thought that I think was there. I don't remember what it was, but I want to find what it was. It feels helpful. I just want to tune in for a moment.
Sure. Yeah.
This is something I'm working with a lot, and it just feels helpful to articulate this. And
sure.
In what we are, where the unknown is, and there's a lot. I think right now we can acknowledge there's a lot of unknown. That's just the energy of the times right now. It feels like everything is changing. The temptation would be either to project some kind of doomsday scenario, or to just like dig a ditch for that doomsday scenario, because it's like, it's all crumbling. I'm giving up. The sensation of fear and dread, almost, of both socially, collectively, in our personal life, like all of these things can feel very alive. And the teaching that I'm working with, that I really just want to articulate, is the result of all of this evolutionary work is good, is healing. Awakening is always a really, really positive thing. And I think all of the teachers throughout all of time have kind of said the same thing. You can't describe awakening. It's an indescribable state.
Yeah.
And thus we're always going to think of awakening and healing through the filter and through the lens of where we are right now. And it's very easy to see ourselves through the filter of things are hard and difficult and scary and fearful and not good. And thus awakening or healing or resolution is like this other thing out there that I can't, I'm off. It's too far away. There's too much messiness. I'm just wanting to bring attention to that, because the possibility of our healing, of greater self-realization and awakening always happens almost right after these really tough times. It's almost like through these tough times where we realize there's an immense amount of healing and beauty in relaxing where we are now and determining ourselves to not allow ourselves to be victimized. It's almost like the teachings and the healing that we're seeking aren't going to come magically at the end of the tunnel. It happens by really shifting our relationship to the process and not allowing ourselves to become invested in a fearful perception of the future. And I think a lot of the healing that happens for us during this time happens accidentally, like spontaneously, because we're not running away from the discomfort of being where we are right now. We're not running away from the discomfort of the unknown. The discomfort of all the uncomfortable content that's arising. And that's just, there's something really wise and beautiful in just recognizing, yeah, this is what this school life is about. Keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And there are really hard moments, really hard days, and then keep on going, keep on going. I think everything that we're seeking is not in the future after this transit. Everything that we're seeking is right here, right now. And the teachings and the healing is right here, right now. Looking no further than how are we thinking of our life? Is it a helpful thought? Is it a useful thought? Is it helping us grow and heal and find power and choice and consciousness in our life right now? Or is it just kind of keeping us in this disempowered, doomsday, victimized state?
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to offer that, because it's going to be very easy next year to feel at times like it's just too hard. And I think that is one of the most precious times in our life, where we are stronger than we realize, and the healing is just right there, just right here, and we don't even know it.
Right when you want to give up, that's when that's when it's, so we look for that, and being aware of it, it'll help us meet that.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
just helpful to remember that in the midst of it. It's like, maybe this is not what I think it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Wow, so much to really, I know we went way over, but hey, you know what? It's okay. Yeah, I feel that strongly. There are so many evolutionary possibilities here, and yeah, it's just mind blown. I can't even think, but that's a good thing. But thank you. I'm just grateful for the time that
Thanks
you
for the
took
opportunity.
to these beautifully nuanced descriptions of and how important this is to have this with us like armor, as we move through this time and this. Yeah, you don't survive a Pluto transit. You just don't.
Right.
You're transformed by it.
Evolve, or you evolve later. Like in the end, everything is a blessing. It's either going to be integrated sooner, or it's going to hurt for a while and you'll integrate it later. Really, in the end. Yeah.
Well, it's going to have a happy ending, whether you one way or the other.
And we can delay that happiness for a long time too. We really, really can. We know that. But in the end, it's like, if we're still here, there's still happy endings to come.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for that words of wisdom. All right. And so your link, once again, your website.
I'm arimoshe.com, ARIMOSHE. Click on the link for the training program. Starts in January.
Yay. Yay,
Oh, and
evolution.
I'll also have a talk. We can put it.
Oh yes,
I'm giving
December.
an introductory talk to
Yeah,
this
December
course,
11th.
and I'm going to be talking about the very interesting topic of fate and choice and the natal chart.
And that's awesome.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
can put the link for that too below.
yeah,
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ari. It's just
yeah. Thank
wonderful
you
to
so
see
much,
you
my friend.
again.
Great to be with you. Really appreciate it.
Yay. Thank you so very much. Okay, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you like, share, subscribe, we're always grateful for your support of the channel, and let us know what you think of this talk. I love hearing from everybody, and yeah, lots of great, rich. I feel it's like Pluto. I associate, with volcanoes. This is like rich, fertile,
Mhm.
volcanic soil, that we can grow with. So thank you for providing this beautiful volcanic soil.
Mhm.
Oh, goodness. All right. All right, everybody. So we will see you next time. Thank you again for listening. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, starsoundastrology.com. Namaste.